You never forget your first, as they say. And my tail does not define me as a person. And I think this was like a gateway drug for me, if you want to call it that. Well, hello, my beautiful reader friends, and welcome back, or welcome for the first time if you are new here. My name is Lori Beth, and today I have a very fun video to do with you guys. This is a little different than what I normally do, but I have seen it floating around, and most recently saw the Book Leo do this, and I thought, if anything, this is just going to be very fun and entertaining. Well, hopefully entertaining for you guys. I don't know if it's going to be fun for me. It might actually leave me even more damaged as a person, but we shall persist. Today, we are going to be reading 1-star reviews of some of my favorite books, which are books that I have rated 5 stars on Goodreads. Why am I doing this to myself? I don't know. Purely for the entertainment aspect behind it, I suppose. So how this video is going to work is I have a list of some of my favorite books that I have rated 5 stars on Goodreads. I'm going to go into that book and filter by 1-star reviews and just at random start scrolling and picking a couple of 1-star reviews to read to you guys on camera and give you my thoughts and opinions on said 1-star review. So without further ado, we are going to go ahead and jump right in. Okay, so as previously mentioned, I do have a couple of books picked out already that I wanted to do this with. Some of my favorite books, most of them are fantasy because I have spent so much of my reading time reading fantasy books, but I did try to grab a few others as well. We are also going to start with quite a banger, if I do say so myself, and that is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I know. Some of you are like Maas fans, not Maas fans. There is a very clear line, and most people are one side or the other of that line, and I am very clearly a fan. And A Court of Thorns and Roses was a book that really just did something for me when I needed it to. Like, I was slumping so hard. At this time, I had not been reading in quite a while. I just couldn't get into any books, and this was world-changing for me. It opened the floodgates for me again. I couldn't put the book down itself, although I will say I kind of specifically remember reading maybe like the first few chapters, and I was like, I don't know, this is like really fantasy heavy. I don't know if I'm gonna love this. And then all of a sudden, I don't know what happened. Like a switch flipped, I was hooked, devoured the entire series, and then I was sad when it was over. But anyways, yes, I am a Maas fan, and I very specifically love this series so much. I think it might have been like the first true romantasy that I had ever read before. And again, like you never forget your first, as they say. You know what I mean? But this is, again, quite a banger if I do say so myself. It has 222,000 community reviews, 2.8 million ratings, and an average of 4.19 stars on Goodreads, which I actually think is pretty darn high. So that's good. I guess I'm not in the minority of people that like this book, at least. But I'm going to go ahead and filter for 1 star. And I'm going to just scroll at random here and see what I find. If you liked this book, good for you. But oh my God, I hated it so much. Well, okay. Well, that was short and sweet. And simple, I guess. My favorite line of this book sums up my reading experience. My bowels turned watery. I couldn't help it. That's a little bit dramatic, but okay. A court of dumb heroine and her horny love interests. If I could erase one book from the world, this would be it. Sorry, or maybe not. That's really mean. One book in this whole world and this is what you would choose to get rid of? I mean, I feel like there are way worse options than just this one. I'm sorry, what? This is Bella Swan Wattpad. I am genuinely doubting my sanity right now. How is this book so hyped up? A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas is one of the most overdone and cringeworthy books I have ever read. The characters are flat, the plot is unrealistic, and the writing is amateurish. If you're looking for a good laugh, then this book is definitely for you. But if you're looking for a good story, then you should steer clear of this one. Did she just say that the plot of this fantasy book was unrealistic? I mean, I guess I can't really argue with her too much there. This made-up fairy world is not realistic. You would be shocked at how long some of these 1-star reviews are, which I guess I appreciate people explaining their thoughts behind their low ratings as opposed to just rating it 1 stars and then like bouncing out. But I can't just sit here and read something that is 3 pages long that I don't wholeheartedly agree with. Do I think that A Court of Thorns and Roses is some literary masterpiece? No. Do I think that if you love very specific types of tropes and romantasy, that it is a really fun book to read? Yes, absolutely. I will stand by that until the day I die. Bury me with that book, A Court of Thorns and Roses, forever and ever. Okay, moving on. So another book that really... Actually, this one took me by surprise when I read it. So after I kind of got back into my fantasy genre, like era of reading, I was grabbing everything I could get my hands on. And the problem with falling in love with something like A Court of Thorns and Roses, Crescent City, also, I just loved Crescent City so much, was that I was having a hard time finding another fantasy slash romantasy that would meet up to the standards that I had already set because of those books. Enter The Cruel Prince. I remember vividly reading, I want to say it was like, I don't know, the first, again, couple of chapters, like 2 or 3 chapters, and I was like, yeah, you know what? I just don't know that this is going to be for me. Also, I was fully aware that it was a YA fantasy versus having read something like ACOTAR. That's a big difference already, but I knew that there was a romance involved just from everything I had seen at like books on Bookstagram at the time. And I just wanted to give it a try. And I was reading it and thinking, yeah, I don't think that I'm going to love this. And then again, something happened. I was sucked in. I loved that book, but more specifically that entire series, so much. Jude and Carden became probably one of my favorite like fantasy romance couples of all time. With that being said, I did rate The Cruel Prince 5 stars. And also with that being said, a lot of people did not rate it 5 stars on Goodreads. So we're going to go ahead and pull that one up and see what we can find. Okay, The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. I don't think I mentioned that. Just for anybody that isn't into fantasy, Holly Black is a very popular fantasy author, more specifically YA fantasy, though she does dabble into some adult fantasy. I've only ever read her YA fantasy, and again, this series most specifically that I love, love, love. And it has 1.3 million ratings, 118,574 reviews, and an average of 4.04 stars. Not too bad. Again, that's really not that bad as far as ratings go on Goodreads. So let's go ahead and filter for 1 star. I feel like I'm the only one who's going to rate this horribly low, because guess what? This was absolute rubbish to me. Here I am, about to explode because of all the annoying nitwits in this book. I am so salty that I'm about to float. How can one of my most anticipated reads turn out to be trash? I feel wronged, so excuse me while I go put my words into an unapologetic review. Seriously though, did I read the same book as everyone else? I don't know. I don't know that we did read the same book, because I had the complete opposite reaction of this, to where I kind of didn't know if I was going to like it right out of the gate, and then suddenly I was obsessed with it and couldn't wait to devour the rest of the series. So, and also nitwits. Oh, okay, I guess you get a point for a fun descriptive word, but no, do not agree. I want this book to come to life so I can punch it in the face. It is terrible. I don't condone violence IRL, so sorry, I disagree with you on that also. Should have stopped reading at the mention of his tail.
Okay. Sorry.
That actually makes me laugh a little bit, because I remember reading that too, and I was a little freaked out by it. Again, I don't know, you just start getting very involved with characters and you start to overlook certain things. And guess what? Like, if I had a tail, I wouldn't want people to judge me about that either, because I'm a good person. And my tail does not define me as a person. Okay. Yo, this book was a wild and problematic ride. So like, okay, Literally every single male fae in this book is utterly detestable and highly problematic, except for Oak, my sweet summer child. Yes, that also includes Carden. He verbally and physically abused Jude, but only because he actually likes and envies her, so that is actually okay in the end. Yeah, fuck that. Also, Matic is straight up a mass murderer, and Jude is a fucking dumbass for still choosing to accept him as a father figure throughout like 90% of this book. And Taryn, oh my fucking god, she made me want to jump into this book and strangle her with my own hands. What is up with that girl? Like, are you actually kidding me? She betrayed her own twin sister and moreover her family for some mediocre fae boy? Yeah, no thanks. Cancelled. Also, Jude is so stupid. Why can't she just go along with her older sister and live in the mortal world? Also canceled. Everyone is canceled except for Vivi and Oak. I will say, again, I very specifically didn't love the book right out of the gate for some reasons, and one of those reasons was this bullying aspect that came from Carden in the start of the book. I didn't love it either. I can fully admit that. I thought it was kind of weird. And also, I was trying to remind myself that I was reading a YA fantasy book. And I feel like even though the characters in this book are kind of like 18-ish age range, they do come off very YA. And I think that's for a reason. I think that Holly Black used them being like true young adults as part of the building for the entire series. They really do start at this very young and naive part of their life and have to kind of go through a lot of things to end up where they end up at the end of the book series. Did I love every part of that? Absolutely not. And some of it is a little cringy and hard to read, especially when you were an adult reading like a YA fantasy. But also, I do think that it comes off childish because it is. And if you remember yourself at like 16, 17, 18 years old, you were probably an idiot too. I mean, no judgments here. I was a total moron at that age. And I think it was used to really bring forward some of the growth that was going to happen in the characters. So although it is kind of not great and yucky to read in the beginning, it really does lead somewhere in the end. So I can see that. I can see that part. But again, sometimes you got to push through to see where something is trying to go. All right, so we hit 2 fantasy books so far. I'm going to switch up gears a little bit. And we're going to go into a romance book. One of my favorite romance books, and also a romance that got me into contemporary romance. I had never read a lot of contemporary romance, not really necessarily a lot of romance at all, but this specific genre just was something I didn't know that I was missing, and that is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. I loved it. I loved it so much. Again, I didn't know that it was something I was missing in my life until I read it. It was just so addictive and sweet and funny. Like the banter. I didn't know that authors could write like real life banter that you would see in a rom-com movie in a book. I know. I know that I was late to the game on how fun romances can be, but this was so much different because my idea of romance, at least what I had read up until that point in time, was kind of your more like traditional romance, you know, very Harlequin, very steamy, which, you know, we all enjoy from time to time, but this felt so much more like real life with some of those really fun, spicy aspects to it that I didn't realize you could kind of like have a good blend or balance of. So with that being said, I loved the story. I had never read anything by Ali Hazelwood, but also, actually that was Ali Hazelwood's first book, I believe, like her first published book. And I just loved it. I ate it up so much. I thought it was such a great, fun time. And again, not everybody feels the same way. So let's go ahead and look up The Love Hypothesis. This one has 1.4 million ratings, 155,178 reviews, and an average rating of 4.14 stars. Again, some of my books, I'm telling you what, I'm rating these babies 5 stars, and they're all over 4 stars on Goodreads. I feel like maybe that means I'm a really good book rater. I don't know. Maybe I have good taste, is what we all say about ourselves and the books that we like to read. Okay, filter by 1 star. I'm blocking everyone who said this was good on BookTok. Well, I'm not on BookTok, so go ahead. Block your little heart out.
He had her whole boob in his mouth. I'm scared.
Okay, Ellen. Well, you know, some of us are built much differently than other people. Maybe that is feasible for some of us versus others. My goodness. Let's not body shame in this space. The love hypothesis, more like the hate hypothesis. Clever. Hate this book with everything I have. BookTok will pay for its crimes against false promotion. Okay, well, you know, whose fault is it that you fell into a trap of a popularized book on the internet? Okay, this is a little long, but let's get into it. This is legitimately one of the worst books I have ever read, and I am astounded at how popular it is. It feels like it should be one of those situations where someone asked a bot to write a romance, and this is the result. That's kind of harsh. The characters are immature, poorly written, and have zero character development. The romance is terrible and literally only progresses because of another character forcing them to interact, and the intimate scene is poorly written and awkward. There's some lines that made me think of men writing women, which is pretty sad, and considering how progressive and feminist this book is supposed to be, weirdly enough, really makes light of sexual assault and harassment. But hey, I guess if you have a white woman talk about how women should have the confidence of mediocre white man, love the irony, then that's all you need. Can we please ban publishing fanfic? Let's talk about some of her points. The characters are immature, poorly written, and have zero character development. That, I feel like, is actually not true. Not even a little bit true. If you've read the same book that I read, they do grow quite a bit, especially Adam, the main character, being like this kind of, you know, well-known a-hole that works in this lab and nobody wants to work with him because he's so mean. Kind of really comes through as a very kind and caring person once you get to know him, and then also starts to display that when it's brought out by the main female character. You know, I don't know. When we start talking about things like being progressive and feminist, I thought that it brought a decent light on feminism to the forefront. The book is quite literally about a PhD student who is a woman working in STEM. So already I'm like, this is a win. I work in STEM as well, and I think it's really important to just put it out into the universe that women do all the same things that men do. Was it flawlessly written? It was a fanfic. Absolutely not. But I thought it was fun, and I thought it was a good time, and I think that sometimes when you are picking up a book of a certain genre, especially, you have to kind of give a little room for error, if you will, and more importantly, someone's first published work. I thought it was really great. I thought that the characters had depth, and I thought that they had a lot of growth, and I personally loved that book so much. Okay, moving onward to, I want to say, one of my favorite books of all time. And it really truly is. So this one might sting a little bit more than even the others, because when I read this book, it opened me again to a genre I didn't know I was missing, which was not just fantasy, but dark academia. And that book is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. If you have been here for a minute, you have heard me talk about Leigh Bardugo time and time again, about how this YouTube channel is basically just a stan account for her. I love her. I love her writing. I love pretty much everything she's written that I've read, at least. But I didn't know that I was going to fall in love with this book the way that I did. And I still think about it. That's how much I loved it. And I also compare a lot of dark academia books to this book. Again, this one's a little different because it's a dark academia with a fantasy setting, but I think that was kind of a good introduction to that genre for me at the time, because I have since read multiple more like straightforward dark academia novels, and I think this was like a gateway drug for me, if you want to call it that. But of course, because I loved it so much, I rated it 5 stars on Goodreads. And let's see what other people had to say about it. Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, 323,000 ratings, 47,321 reviews, and an average of 4.02 stars. Again, above 4 stars. There's something, I'm telling you, about my taste in books. People are not really disagreeing that strongly. Okay, let's filter. 1 star. Oof, talk about disappointment. I've been waiting for this book to come out ever since its release was announced, so you can imagine just how annoyed I am. I tried so hard to finish at least half of the book, but I just could not. I'm not gonna lie, I just cannot believe Leigh Bardugo wrote this. The same author who wrote Six of Crows? All the 200 pages I read, I didn't have a single clue about what was happening. Didn't know who or what this Dante was, realized halfway through that Alex hadn't finished high school and that was rescued from a life of misery, blah blah. In all of this mess, it's kind of hard to give a damn about Yale's secret societies. Okay, well, honestly, it just sounds like the book confused you a little bit, and that's fine. There were definitely time jumps in this story, but I found them all very pivotal into kind of giving the book substance, and they all seem to make sense to me. I think this is just a very clearly subjective review. I can't say it any other way, which I get. I mean, I know all reviews are subjective, but this one specifically, because there's times where I've read books where I'm like, yeah, I feel really weird and confused and I don't know what's going on. But I've been in the minority. After reading this in-depth review, I am marking this as a DNF and will likely never pick up another book by Bardugo. Oh, see, I hate to see that. Hate to see it. Because this is definitely different than her writing Six of Crows, for example, which, spoiler alert, is also on this list. Do not compare all authors' works to like their own series that they've created. And if I'm being honest, I kind of love that an author can bring something fresh, like that they're not all copy and paste, because that is also funny enough what like someone like Sarah J. Maas gets a lot of flack for. So, you know, it sounds like to me it's you're damned if you do and damned if you don't as an author. Either your books are too similar or they're way too different and people are like, this can't be the same author that wrote this, or I'm never going to read anything else by this author because I didn't like this one book. Please, maybe I'll send you a message. Just pick something else up. Just try Six of Crows because you never know. And also, reading The Familiar this year by her was way different than anything she has also ever written. So you can't just base your entire outlook on an author on one book. I just don't think you should do that. All right, this book was just terrible from the get-go. Weak plot, forgettable characters, and a verbose writing style that came across pretentious rather than informative. DNF'd at page 233 as I didn't want to suffer any longer. There was just so much wrong with this, but I don't want to waste any more time thinking of it lest I get depressed. This was my first novel from her, and I am now worried about reading further books from the author as I did not enjoy her writing style in this novel. Not worth the read, stay clear, and read something better. This is actually making me more sad than I thought it was going to, more specifically because I am now running across these reviews of people completely discounting an author off of one book, which, I mean, I want to say I get it, but I just don't. I don't function that way. Because I don't think that an author will always produce something that you like, even if you've loved 4 out of 5 books that they have written. This is making me more upset because I just want people to know that Leigh Bardugo is not just this one book. Do I love her very specifically because of this one book? Absolutely. This is probably my favorite book that she has written. But guess what? I also loved Six of Crows. I just don't love seeing this happen. So here with Leigh Bardugo, if you didn't love Ninth House, her adult novel, maybe try her YA stuff. You might like the writing style more. Like, why just completely take everything off the table because of this one bad experience? All right, so hang in there with me. We only have a couple more to go over. So going through some fantasy heavy stuff, we hit a romance. I wanted to grab something that was just more streamlined. So I went the contemporary fiction route and had to go with this book because I just recently read this. This has already made an appearance in a couple of videos of mine, more specifically in my mid-year freakout tag, when this is an author that I fell in love with so far this year, and a book that totally surprised me, a book that I loved way more than I thought I was going to, and that is Normal People by Sally Rooney. If you have been around the booktube space or the bookstagram space for a minute, you know that the reviews on this book are kind of split down the middle. I swear this is like a 50-50. You were either gonna like it or you were not gonna like it. And I'm not gonna lie, when I read it, I was reading it because I felt prompted to, because it did have such a big impact in the book community space. And I was like, I feel like I'm not gonna like this book at all, but I want to find out what's going on here. Like, what is all the conversation about? I should probably have my own opinion on it. I loved it. I loved it so much. It even took me by surprise. I don't know, there was something about the writing style, The characters very specifically, like I related to the main female character kind of a lot because she was like this really awkward, weird girl in high school. And then as they kind of started moving through different periods of their life, she kind of just started to grow and develop like most of us do, right? But kind of just coming into her own a little bit, including her confidence, but just watching like the character growth between both of these characters together and then also on their own, I really enjoyed. And I kind of liked the age that they were at, like as I described in some of these videos, which I'll link down below where I've talked about the book already. Being at the age I'm at now, reading about some young adults like going into the adult world is really fun and interesting for me because I like seeing how other people have handled situations I've personally kind of been in before or been around at least, kind of like, you know, adjacent situations, if nonetheless. So I really enjoy reading books about some like true young adult characters, I guess, if you will. Also, I really enjoyed Sally Rooney's writing style, which I think is kind of like the give and take on this book. Like a lot of people just don't love the way she writes, which that's valid, very valid. But of course, I rated this 5 stars, and we are going to see what other people had to say about it. So this one has 1.4 million ratings, 142,838 reviews, and the lowest on our list so far at a 3.81 average star rating on Goodreads. We are going to pull up our reviews, filter by 1 star. I'm a little scared. I feel like these are going to be really harsh. Whoever was responsible for the marketing of this book deserves a raise because they managed to make 600K plus people read this incredibly boring story. I didn't think it was boring. I checked 3 times to see if there was something wrong with my Kindle copy, only to find out that leaving out quotation marks was intentional. Absolutely unforgivable. So I talked about this in the vlog that I did of this book. That was a little jarring for me to read, and I've actually DNF'd a book in the past because I couldn't get past the author not using quotation marks, and the author also happened to be an Irish author as well, and I didn't know if if that was a common thing with either like UK-based authors or Irish-based authors. I don't know, that might sound really dumb, but that was very jarring for me at one point in time as well. However, because I connected with the characters in this book and the story so immediately that I just kind of like, suddenly it wasn't an issue anymore, and it wasn't even a thing. Like I didn't even notice it after I was like 100% in. You know what I mean? Thanks, I hate it. Bland writing, pretentious characters, cliche plot. Important topics like growing up, first love, class differences, abuse, depression, suicide are handled with no nuance or depth. There's not one line in this novel that made me want to stop and think. We truly read a different book. That is not how I felt whatsoever. In fact, I annotated so much in this book that I couldn't stop highlighting things that resonated with me. I keep thinking that something is wrong with me, that I somehow didn't get it, and this makes me so very mad. Okay, well, I don't love to hear that either. First of all, I know I've been like kind of saying like, oh, you didn't get it. I didn't think it was pretentious. Like you probably just didn't understand it. This is all in jest. I don't think that is really a thing because I have felt that multiple times when reading books before. I'm like, I just don't think I'm smart enough to read this. And I really think at the end of the day, what it is we just don't vibe with certain writing styles and certain authors, and that is totally okay. That has nothing to do with you as a reader. I personally feel that way. I just think you don't connect with everything you read. That just is what it is. As far as the writing being bland, the cliche plot and important topics handled with no nuance or depth, I have to completely disagree, like 100% disagree. I feel like the way that the topics in the book were handled were very raw and also very more, I don't know, just real. Like they really had a hard time communicating with each other and expressing their feelings. And I think that's what you are more likely to find in real life than these characters in books that kind of just give you the way things should have been handled on the page. I don't think that's real. I think that to see a character kind of almost shut down or deal with something very heavy and not know how to tell other people about it makes them relatable. And probably if you've ever been through anything that this character has dealt with very clearly, that is going to feel more prominent to you. But I kind of feel like the writing in this book was very purposely supposed to be young adult people that don't know how to handle shit and have to learn by trying and failing. And that's what I think I loved the most about the book. Okay, friends, hang in there with me. We have one more to go over, and I wanted to bring it back to my roots, back to the beginning of when we started this video, into the fantasy genre. And I already gave you the spoiler alert for this, which is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo, and I wanted to put this on the list because this to me was more of a true fantasy, and yes, it does have like a romance subplot, but this was more fantasy forward and not romantasy forward. And also, I just loved the shit out of this book. I loved it so much. This ragtag group of people, this found family, which was a trope I didn't even realize I liked until I read this story. And also, this was an eye-opening experience for me because it was a duology, and I felt like it was perfect in just the amount. Like, it was what I needed. I don't need a 7-book series all the time. This was like a neat little fantasy package with a bow on top in 2 books, and it was all I needed, all I wanted, and I loved these characters in this world so much. And this is the book that made me fall in love with Leigh Bardugo. So why I'm getting so like worked up and upset is because I started with her YA book and moved to an adult fantasy of hers, and I ended up loving both. It's like I want these other people to experience the same things as me and feel the same way. Why you wouldn't love both, I don't understand, but I would highly suggest just trying something different from an author if you don't necessarily love one of their novels. But with that being said, I obviously rated this one 5 stars. And we will see what other people had to say about it. Okay. 980,999 ratings, 105,772 reviews, and an average of 4.48 stars on Goodreads, the highest book that we have talked about so far in this video. Man, I feel good about my ratings. Oh, this is interesting. Dog, my math book got a better plot. You know, 5 out of 5 stars for short, simple, effective reviews. This book was so dry, I needed Jergens afterwards. Did not finish. I give young adult a chance once every 3 months, and I am beginning to understand why. More like 6 of blows. That was actually quite funny. And yes, maybe young adult just simply isn't for you. All right. Every day, I wonder why this series got so popular. This book was so mind-numbingly boring, I thought I must be reading a different book than everyone else. Clearly you were. Nothing, and I promise you nothing, happens other than a million POV changes and a billion flashbacks. Yeah, the climax was okay, mostly because, for one, something started happening, but even that was bogged down by POV changes and flashbacks. I'm talking so many POV swaps and flashbacks, they went far past annoying me into the enraging me territory. The characters are okay. The writing is average, and no plot points at all until the heist as the climax at the end of the book. Overwhelmingly disappointing and completely underwhelming in every conceivable way. I cannot describe how deep my hatred of this book runs. Every day I regret not DNFing this book like I had wanted to. Well, that was a little dramatic. Okay, so I will say that the POV changes did seem kind of excessive at times, but I do think that they were pivotal to the plot and added substance to the story. I found it very interesting to see the thoughts and emotions behind multiple characters that were in this situation besides just the 2 main characters, which I found myself connecting with certain characters out of the others because of all the POV changes. And I also just love character-driven books so much. So I guess if that's not your thing, maybe something like this story wouldn't be for you, and I could totally see that. But because it was this, again, like the ragtag group of kids, the found family situation, being able to just see how they were all feeling while trying to get to the greater purpose of the story, I felt made it very easy to connect to and kept me very interested, because they're not all going to have the same thoughts and opinions. When you have a group of people with very strong personalities, you are going to get different thoughts and views on what should be the final outcome for this entire team of people. But I really liked that. Will I admit that it is a little hard if you don't love POV changes? Yes, probably. But if you like characters and you like kind of connecting to other characters, side characters more specifically in a story besides just the one or two main characters, then I think you would absolutely love where this book goes. Well, there you have it, my friends. Those are some of my favorite books on Goodreads that I have rated 5 stars, and some, I guess you could say, unpopular opinions in the 1-star reviews. If this video was anything for you, I hope that it was just slightly entertaining, just because I think it's good for us to sometimes step back and realize, again, when it comes to reading, that things are totally and completely subjective. So even though we love this book community that we build and the thoughts and reviews and opinions that are out there on books, I just want to say to you, please, if anything, if you are questioning whether you should read a book or not, maybe just give it a go. You might not have the same thoughts and feelings on a book than the other booktuber that you love most of the time, and that is totally fine. So go out there, try all the things, read all the genres, pick a book up, and put that book down if you don't like it. But with that being said, I would love to know if you have read any of the books that we talked about in today's video. I am here for it. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on those books, even if they are not 5-star reviews like mine. Drop those in a comment below. Also, what are some of your 5-star books? Let me know those in a comment down below as well. As always, if you liked this video, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. And if you want to make sure you don't miss any of my other upcoming videos, like my unboxing video that is shortly to come, go ahead and hit that subscribe button too. As always, it has been an absolute blast, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next one.